Guys, this is Miss Casey and I am back with another reading and art class project for us, and so we are going to be learning about the book Aquicorn Cove. Some of you may have already read it, some of you may be halfway through it, and some of you may have not read it at all, and that's okay. Whatever point you're at, this project is going to be fun no matter where you are, no matter if you know about the book or not. It's a very awesome, beautiful creature that we're going to be creating, and the book is also really fun to talk about, so we'll be talking about that, and I really hope you guys enjoy it, so keep watching. Alrighty, so as I said, our book that we're working and going to be inspired by today is Aquicorn Cove. Okay, and so here's a sample of what we're going to be making today. Now, I'm going to be creating the species of Aquicorn, just like we see here from the book. But what we're going to be focusing on today is not necessarily an aquicorn, but a new species. So you can create a new species inspired by the Aquicorn Cove book that we read. You can create an aquicorn to fully be inspired by the book, or you can just create any underwater new species using your own imagination, and that will also be having us be inspired by this book, because the author, Katie O'Neill, who we'll talk about in just a moment, but she wrote and also illustrated this book, this beautifully written and illustrated book with the Aquicorns and all of our characters and beautiful scenes and settings. And so we kind of want to dive into our imagination and think of how we can create our own new species similar to this aquicorn. Okay, so again, we'll talk about our book in other points in just a moment, but for this project, you are going to be using watercolors, and we're going to use watercolors for basically our whole picture, our background, our species here. And so you want to make sure that you have a good enough paper, like Bristol paper or watercolor paper, to work on. We're also going to be using a little bit of color pencils, and that's going to be for any final small details or shading that you may want to add. So I'm going to be using my watercolors and color pencils. If you don't have these materials, then you can use any other materials that you have. Any other materials will work. And so this is just mainly going to be a fun project for us to feel inspired by the book. We're going to talk a little bit about the book and aquicorns and how those were kind of developed. But I really want to encourage you guys to create your own species, to create your own stories behind them. But we'll talk a little bit about how our author created this and why. Okay? And so you want to make sure you have your final paper, your materials, whatever material you're going to be using, and let's go ahead and get started talking about our book. So I'm going to have my little story chart here. I'm actually going to move my supplies over a little bit so that way you guys can focus on our book. Okay, so for our chart here, our title and author, I kind of already mentioned that, but for our title, we have Aquicorn Cove, and our author and illustrator is Katie O'Neill. Now for our characters, the book isn't all entirely about aquicorns. That is one of our characters, especially a specific little baby one, but our main character that the book follows is a young girl named Lana. Okay, and so Lana is the one who finds this little baby aquicorn. And so when she discovers the aquicorn, then the aquicorn becomes a character in our book as well. But we also have some other characters that that come along the way. We have not just human characters, but also underwater sea creatures like the aquicorn, and we end up discovering this whole underwater world full of other magical, beautiful creatures. So a couple of our other human characters that help Lana along the way is Aunt May, and that's Lana's aunt. We also have Lana's father, and then a few of the other villagers around town. And then again, as I said, we also encounter the underwater sea creatures, and so those become some characters in the book also. Now for our setting, we have a couple of settings. As I mentioned just briefly, we have some villagers, which means one of the settings is a village. It's a seaside town or village. And then that's where the beginning of the book kind of starts. But then we also have the coral reef, this underwater magical world where all of our sea creatures live. And so that also becomes an important setting in our book. Now, I keep saying book, but I do want to let you guys know this is a graphic novel. It has a lot of beautiful pictures. Like I said, Katie O'Neill wrote it, but she also illustrated it. And so we have like really a lot of pictures, really beautiful illustrated pictures. So this is a book, it is a graphic novel, so it's very similar to like a comic book. Okay, so that makes it really fun to read. So if you guys haven't read this, I really hope you guys feel inspired and get excited to read it because it is really beautiful and fun to read. Okay, now apart from that, getting to our plot here. So I'm going to tell you guys just a little bit more points about this book and kind of what's going on. And then once we talk just a little bit about our book, then we're going to stop. I'm going to talk about the second half of our chart about halfway through our project, and then we'll talk a little bit more about our character and why we're drawing aquicorns or making up our own species. So we'll go over that in just a moment. But to go over our plot, we have Lana, again, our main character, who's a young girl, and her father returned back to their home seaside town, so a hometown, which is by the seaside. And so they end up going back to help Aunt May and the other villagers clean up after a storm. So if you don't know, many towns and villages that are near the sea, they tend to have, if it's really windy or if we have like just a regular rainstorm or something like that, by the sea, those kind of storms could actually be very damaging to their little towns or villages. Natural disasters like hurricanes or tsunamis can cause a lot of damage, and these small towns and villages end up having to do a lot of cleanup after storms like this hit their town. So that is what Lana and her father have come to the village to do and help with. And so while helping, Lana is kind of walking near the shore on the beach, and she finds a baby aquicorn in the tide pool. So this is where we meet our little baby aquicorn, and she discovers this species, and she hasn't really seen anything like this before. So she rescues it, takes it home with her, and she helps kind of raise it and help it grow along with her Aunt May. Aunt May helps her as well. But as she discovers this aquicorn, she also starts to learn a lot about where the aquicorn lives and comes from. She discovers this underwater, beautiful world with more aquicorns and other magical sea creatures. And so after discovering this world, she starts to learn how the villagers have abandoned a lot of traditional ways. So there's parts in the book that tell us that a long time ago, the villagers and the underwater creatures kind of developed this tradition or this plan to help coexist with each other. And so Lana has found that the villagers are not meeting their end of the deal, and so what that is and what she ends up finding out is that they are overfishing. So they are fishing too much, and they are getting more fish than they are supposed to, leaving the underwater sea creatures without food. And this is also destroying their ecosystem and the coral reefs. And so essentially this is destroying their home. So Lana is very saddened to hear about this, especially knowing that the adults that she looks up to are part of the problem, and she wants to make it right. So we go through her adventure, all of her learnings, and this whole journey that she takes throughout the book. So we'll talk a little bit more about the rest of our book, and we'll, especially the second half here, as we go through our project, and then halfway through the project, we'll stop and talk a little bit more about this. So I'll go ahead and leave the book at that part. And if you have read it all, then you can kind of figure out what we're doing and pull a little bit more inspiration from the book. But if you haven't read the book, I'll also talk a little bit about it as well as we do our project. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and set my chart to the side, and I'm going to bring back our sample here. Now the reason why I'm bringing this back is just to talk a little bit more specifically about this species, the aquicorn, because if you are not drawing an aquicorn with me, which I encourage you not to, because I really want you guys to think about a completely new species that lives underwater and what you think that species would look like, how you think they would live underwater, and I'm going to tell you guys basically how this aquicorn kind of came about and was created, so that way it can give you guys some inspiration to create your own species. So an aquicorn, if you guys can't already hear it in the name, the aquicorn takes a couple of elements from different creatures that we already know and love today. So aqua, part of the name, could be translated to like ocean or water. So that's the first part of the name, aqua, and then corn, you may have already guessed it, but that part comes from a unicorn. We have this little horn right here at the top of the head. So an aquicorn is basically similar to a unicorn living underwater. But we also have these other elements that doesn't necessarily show it's specifically comes or identifies as a unicorn. So a couple of other elements that we find are, and it's also mentioned quite a lot in the book, but this creature looks a lot like a seahorse, okay? And so that's one of the elements that this creature kind of takes from. So it's a seahorse, a unicorn, and then we also have these big, beautiful wings, 2 on each side of its body. And those, we know a seahorse don't have wings. We know unicorns don't usually have wings. So the wings could kind of be pulled from possibly like dragons or something else, maybe like another magical creature. And so in developing this new species, the author and illustrator Katie O'Neill has pulled many different elements from magical creatures and realistic creatures to create this new species. So when you guys think about your new species and you try to imagine what you could create, you want to think about many of the different sea animals or land animals or creatures that are still alive and we know today. Even some creatures that don't exist or are not alive today. But you want to think about everything that could exist and some ways that you can combine them, the same way that a couple of elements have been combined to create this aquicorn. Now, we do want to make a species that live underwater, so that way we can keep it similarly to Aquicorn Cove, and maybe they could be the friends of the aquicorns. But you want to think of things like maybe a sea turtle, or a shark, or a mermaid, things that are real and maybe things that are not real. So you can maybe use like a Pegasus, or a dragon, or a unicorn, or a fairy. So think of creatures that are not real, think of creatures that are real, and then how can you combine them to create a whole new species. So I really want you guys to have fun with this, use your imagination. The most important thing, it doesn't have to be a beautifully created right from the start species. Again, you kind of want to have fun with this, you want to experiment a little. So the main part of this project is that you have fun, and if you don't want to create a whole new species, then you can definitely follow along with me as I create this this aquicorn here. But after we create this together, I do recommend that you go in and think about, now that you've created an aquicorn, what species could you now create all by yourself? Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead. Now for our drawing today, we are not going to be doing a practice draw. We're actually going to go straight into our final draw. And the reason for this is because everyone's going to be doing a completely different creature, animal, species, and I'm going to be doing an aquicorn. So if that's what you'd like to follow along with me, then you can definitely follow as I draw. But everyone that is doing a new species, your animals may not even have the same body structure. So we're not doing a practice draw because you guys are basically going to do your own thing. So if you'd like to do your own form of a practice draw and kind of think of different elements that you can pull from different creatures and animals, then you can practice that and put it all together and then create your species, and then you can work on your final draw, and then we can all do our coloring steps together. Okay? But if you'd like to draw an aquicorn with me, then go ahead and follow along. Again, we're not going to be working on a practice draw, so make sure you pay close attention. And if there's any steps that you need more time with, then you can always pause this video and continue on where you're at once you're ready. All right, so you guys are going to be using a pencil, but I'm actually going to start with a Sharpie just so that you can see my lines a lot better on the screen. So again, if you're not doing an aquicorn, then go ahead, take your time and create your whole new species. Have fun with it. Like I said, it's not meant to be perfect right away. Just have fun, create what you can, and then we'll get started on our coloring steps in just a short moment. If you are drawing an aquicorn with me, go ahead and follow along. We are first going to start with the head. So make sure your paper is turned vertical up and down because our aquicorn is a very long creature and it has a curly tail like a seahorse and it has long wings. So we're going to keep our paper up and down. So we're going to start on the left side of our paper and we're going to draw a circle for the head. Once you have that circle for the head, we are then going to draw a sideways letter U coming from the bottom of the head and connecting to the side of the head. This is for the little snout. Now once you have that, next what we're going to do is we're going to draw these curved lines down for the neck. So the neck is pretty long. We're going to start from the back of our circle for the head and draw a long line that comes down and then curve it about halfway. Now we're going to come down right close to where the snout, at the bottom of the snout and the bottom of the head meet. And you're going to draw a curved line that comes down just a little bit shorter, about half of our back of the neck here. And then you're going to bring it out. Okay. And we can extend that line out a little bit more. You're going to bring it over like to the middle of your paper. Once you have those two lines, next what we're going to do is we are going to start drawing our wings. So the wings are really big and beautiful. So right at the end of this line here, we are going to draw a line that comes up diagonally, and then you're going to bring that back out to the right, and if you have room, then you can go ahead and just bring it up close to the end of your paper. If you don't have room, again, these are very big wings. I don't really have that much room, so I'm going to bring it off the paper to make it look like it's cropped. All right, once I have that, then I'm going to draw the bottom of my wing. So what I'm going to do is start in the middle of the paper, which is where the middle of the body would be. And so you want to get about maybe a 3-finger space. And so right underneath where the start of your wing, where you started your wing, you're going to draw a curved line like a letter U, a small curved line. Then you're going to draw a big curved line for a second U, but make it wider than this first one. And then you're going to draw a diagonal line. And you want that diagonal line to make it look like the tip of the wing is coming out into a point. Kind of looks a little bit like a bird right now. So once you have that, what we're going to do next is we're going to draw the rest of our wings. So we have 2 wings on each side. So now right along this second big U, we're going to draw a line that comes from the bottom of that big U and out to the side of your paper. This wing, would be a little bit shorter than our top wing. So if you had that space to be able to finish up your wing, then you should have enough space for this wing, and you want to make sure that's shorter. Once you have that, we're going to come back down to the start of our wing where these letter U's are. And right underneath that, maybe about a 2-finger space, you're going to draw another small letter U, a wide letter U, and then a line that comes in. And again, you want to make it look as if it's going to come to a point. So they start getting thinner as they end. So those are for our wings on the right side of our aquicorn. So now we're going to finish up the body. So I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to continue this curved line over and then stop just a little bit more. Okay, now this is where I'm going to start my feet. So right in front of this line that I just drew, I'm going to draw a curved line like a letter C from the inside of the body and down just a little bit further. Then I'm going to curve it over and around. So this is for the front of the foot. And I'm going to draw a big letter U for the very tip of the foot. And then I'm going to bring that back up, over, and up to the bottom of the body. And I want to bring that up into the body, actually. All right, now once I have that, I'm going to add a second letter U at the very end of the foot. And that's just a little detail line. Now I'm going to draw the rest of the front feet. So this is for the foot on the other side. So this one's just kind of peeking behind this front foot. So I'm going to draw a curved line down, almost to touch my foot, and then bring it straight down past my first foot, because this one is bent, if you can see. This one's going to be a little bit straighter. Then I'm going to draw a big letter U and connect it up to the top, or to the tip of my front foot. I'm going to draw the second letter U at the very tip. So now that I have those feet, next I'm going to finish up with the tail. And so the tail's really long and curly. So we're going to start on the other side of this foot here. Make sure that the body kind of lines up on the other side. And then you're going to draw a line that comes down, and it's going to curve around into this spiral shape. So once you have that line, then we're going to come underneath this wing that we have on the right, the very bottom wing, and you're going to, again, kind of match it up to this side of the body. And then you're going to bring it down and curve around to match up with this side. I'm going to just curve it a little bit more. And you want to make it thinner as you reach the very end. All right, now I haven't closed off my tail just yet, so keep watching. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to draw a curved line like a rainbow, and then we're going to draw a triangle shape at the very tip and finish that tail off. Okay, now along the tail we have a little bit of some like fins that come down, so we're going to draw a couple of fins at the very tip of the tail and a couple of fins at the very end of the tail. All right, so right along the middle over here, I'm going to draw a curved line that starts inside the tail and comes out. And then I'm going to draw 3 curved lines like a letter U that comes back into the tail. Then underneath that, I'm going to draw 2 letter U's and draw a diagonal line to meet at the end for the other side. Now we have this line from the tail that comes inside, so you have a pencil and you're just going to erase that line inside. Now lastly, we're going to have some little fins on the inside of our tail over here. So we're going to basically do the same thing. Draw a curved line from the inside of the tail out. Draw 3. This time it's going to be like sideways letter U's or rainbow lines. Bring that into the tail, and then you're going to draw 2 little rainbow lines coming out and a diagonal line in to touch for the other side. Then you want to erase that line from the tail inside of the fin for the front fin. All right, so we have those details there. So the body of our Aquicorn is basically drawn out. Now we're just going to add some more details. We do have some wings that are in the back, and so we're going to see a little bit of those. And then we're also going to draw our face details. Okay, so for the wings in the back, we are going to start along the back of the Aquicorn. You're going to draw a curved line that comes up. Okay, and once you have that curved line, then you're going to draw a straight line that comes up nice and tall. And then you're going to curve it at the tip and bring it down straight. Once you have that, then we're going to add just a little tip of the second wing, and it should be shorter so we don't see much of it. We're just going to see a little tip. So curve it at the tip and bring it down. So once you have that, now we're going to add a couple of face details. So we're going to start with the eye. So we're going to come in the middle of the face, right in the middle of that circle that we first drew, and you're going to draw a curved line like a rainbow, but it's going to slant a little bit. And then you're going to bring an oval shape or like a teardrop shape in halfway. Then right above that, you're going to draw another slanted rainbow. And then right above that, you're going to add a little oval shape. Once you have that, then you're going to add a slanted oval right at the tip of the snout for the nostril. And then right above on the right side of our head, right above the eye, we're going to add our horn. And it's a little baby horn, so we're going to draw two lines that come up like a triangle, and then you're going to curve it at the point. And then at the very bottom inside the head, you're going to draw a little curved line to show where it attaches. Then you can also add a little curved line inside the horn for some detail. Next, we're going to add the ears. Now, Aquicorns have very big ears. So we're going to start at the top of the head, and we're going to draw a curved line that comes up and back. You're going to curve it at the tip, and then bring it down, curve it in and out till you reach the bottom of the head where the neck connects. Then once you have that, right in front where that first line started for the ear, you're going to kind of bring it down a little bit into the head to show how it connects. And now we're going to draw the back ear. So it's very similar to the wing. The ear is kind of flipped, so we're not going to see much of it. It's on the other side, and this is basically the back of that ear. So we're going to draw a curved line up and then bring it straight, curve it at the tip, and then bring it down and curve it in to the top of the head. All right, so now that we have all of those details, we're going to go in and just finish up some of the details. So we're going to go at the very tip of the foot, add two curved lines for the toes. You can add a couple of curved lines for some detail and texture in the wings. And once you're done with those final details, that's all we're going to be doing for our Aquicorn. So if you were working on a new species, if you were working on a new species, then you can go ahead and finish up with that if you haven't already. If you need to pause the video, if you're still working on some parts for the Aquicorn, you can definitely pause and finish off where you need more time. And next, what we're going to do is we're going to work on our background details. So the background details are not going to be too much. However, whether you did an aquicorn or a new species, you can kind of change some details for the background if you'd like. But first, what we want to add is the ground line for our background. So you can make your ground line a little bit higher, you can make it a little bit lower, that's up to you. I'm going to make mine just below the feet and right along the tail. So I'm going to draw a curved line that comes up and then below the foot comes into the tail. You want to continue that line wherever it hits. And so I'm drawing a wavy line because sand does not usually flatten out perfectly, usually has a very irregular line. So I recommend drawing a wavy line. You don't want to have it too wavy, like waves of an ocean, but you also don't want to have it too flat. So once you have your ground line, then you're going to add some details in your sand. So as we know from the book, aquicorns live in the coral reef, and that's a big setting in our book. So you can, if you want and you have the book with you, you can kind of pull some inspiration from a few of those pictures. You can see how Katie drew the coral, and you can draw coral that way. You can draw coral how you want to and how you know how. Or if you want, you can make up different types of plant life for the underwater world that your species lives in. So you can just have fun with this extra step for the background and these details. Like I said, if you wanted your sand, your ground line to be a little bit higher, maybe you'll see a little bit more in your ground. If your ground line is low, maybe you'll add a couple of extra details in the water, maybe some other species. Maybe you'll have some fish. Maybe you have some fish that are floating in the background. So you can add any details that you want. I'm going to go ahead and add some coral similar to what we see in the book. She has these very thin stem-like kind of coral. And then along the sand, you kind of see these like pebble stone shapes. So if you'd like, you can add similar details, or again, you can make up your own. That's up to you. But once you are done and you have added the details that you'd like to add, then that is all for our drawing. So once you are ready and you have added everything that you want, then you can go ahead and continue on. So for our coloring, we are going to pull our watercolors up close to us. Actually, before we start coloring in with our watercolors, you guys have done this all in pencil. So I recommend that you take a Sharpie or a permanent marker and you outline all of those pencil lines that you just created. Please do erase those lines that you no longer need. So that's going to be the head that we have here on the inside of our snout, our neck, our ear, inside the horn. We don't want that. Any other lines that you accidentally made and that you need to erase. Anything that comes inside of your lines that you don't want. Go ahead and erase everything that you need to erase, and then when you're done, you're going to outline and trace over all of those pencil lines. So now, if you need some time with your tracing, you can pause the video and continue on with that. But if you are done tracing, next we're going to get started on our watercolors. So I'm going to pull my watercolors closer to me. And what we're going to start on first is the body of our species. So whether you have an aquicorn or whatever other species you created, we are going to color that in now. Now, in the book, Aquicorns were found in many different colors. In my sample, I created this pink, purplish Aquicorn, so I'm going to continue on with that same color, but you can make your species or your Aquicorn whatever color you want or that you have, okay? So I'm going to start with a very light red to create my pink. So if you have a palette, like I do, I recommend mixing any colors or helping you manage your water using this palette. It's very helpful. So you can do that by adding some water to a section in your palette and then taking the color that you'd like to use. And this will help you create a good mixture of water and color and get a good ratio. So that way you don't have your watercolors too dark or too light. And you can test that out if you'd like. Okay, but once you have a color that you like, then you're just going to start painting in. Okay, so I'm going to keep mine very light because I want it to be like a pink color. And I'm just going to paint in my whole, give myself a nice wash around my whole Aquicorn. So when you're adding a wash, basically that means you're making a very light base color. It's always important to start out light when you're working with watercolors because you can always go darker, but it is much harder to get lighter with your watercolors. So as you do your base color, if you start with the color that you maybe don't like, then you can always change it and fix it because your color and your layer should have been light enough. Now, any areas that you want to be white, if you're working on a white paper, then you would just not paint that in or work as lightly as possible. If you accidentally did paint in an area that you want to stay super, super light or even white, then usually having a very light layer like this, if you put a darker color next to that light area, then that contrast will help make it look as light as you'd like it to be. Now, any parts of your painting that you need to paint with a medium brush or a smaller brush, you can go ahead and switch your brushes as you feel you need to. That's what I'm going to be doing, but right now my large brush is just good enough. Alright, so once you have a good light wash on your creature here, you like how it looks, then that's all you need to add for your wash layer. Okay, but next what you're going to do is you're going to work on some shading. So you're going to be using the same color, and if you have a palette like me, you're just going to add a little bit more water to your palette, but then you're going to add more paint to your palette this time because you want it to be darker. So you can kind of test that out, and if it looks darker than your first color, then you're good to go. And so this time you're just going to find a side that you want to have a little bit more shadow, and you're just going to go along that side and make it just a little bit darker. So I recommend, since this is actually meant to be a thin shadow area, I recommend getting a small brush or medium-sized brush. Just going to follow my aquicorn down the bottom side. And then as I come to the very end tip of my tail here, I'm going to make that a little bit darker because it is kind of coiling up to each other, and so it will get a lot of shadow from itself. Now anytime if you have a dark color next to a very light color and you want that to blend a little bit, you're just going to take a little bit of water, damp out as much water as you can from your brush, and you're just going to kind of pull that into your lighter color, and it will help blend that a little bit more. So you can kind of see I blended that out now and it doesn't look as harsh. So if you don't want your shadow to look too harsh, you can kind of do that along the side of the body as well. Be careful because if your shaded area has a lot of pigment, then you could potentially pull some of that dark area into your light area. But for the most part, it shouldn't be too bad. So you can see I'm kind of blending that out a little bit more. It's not as harsh. Alright, and once you've added some shadow into your species, then you can go ahead and you can add any other colors that you want. You can add details and color to your details and things like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in some darker areas for these this back ear, these back wings, and this back foot. So if you have any areas on your creature that are kind of further back, then you kind of want to show that it has a different coloration. It's a little bit darker. So I'm going to use, since I have this pink, I'm going to take a little bit of red violet here. Make it a dark purplish color. And I'm going to make that just a little bit of a darker pink. Now once you have a color, and if you don't like it, again, always try and work lighter first. So I think it should be a little bit darker. I'm going to take a little bit of some purple and kind of add that in instead. I like how it mixed in with that red violet, so I think I'm going to keep that combination. So do what works best for you and your creature. I'm going to do the same thing in the ear back here, and then this back leg. Okay, so once you have added in a little bit more shading and your details, then that is it for your aquicorn. So I'm just going to go in and add just a little bit more details real quickly. If you are still working, you can definitely pause the video where you need more time. If you are already done with painting in your creature, and adding in your shading and details, then you can go ahead and skip forward and move on to the next step. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit more of this red violet and make it pretty dark. So use less water, more paint. And I'm going to go right along my details in the wings here. I'm going to make that a little bit darker. Now, keep in mind we are going to go back in with with color pencils and add even more detail and a little bit of shading. So if there's anything that you don't want to do with your watercolors because maybe the area is a little too small, then you can always wait to do that step in your color pencils. All right, but once you have finished that up, then next what we're going to do is we are going to paint in our background because we're still painting. All right. So now I'm going to start painting in the background, and so I have my ocean and my ground. I'm going to start with my ground first. I'm going to use my big brush, and I'm going to take this yellow orange. Again, you want to start with the wash, so washes are very light, so I'm going to get some yellow orange and make it nice and light. Now I'm just going to go across my whole ground. Now, if you like that light look, then you can keep it super light. If you're not too big of a fan of the really light watercolors, then you can keep your base color light and then go back in with some other layers to add in some shading. You can create a gradient going from light to dark. Usually the very bottom of your ground would be dark, and then as you get higher, it's going to get lighter and lighter because it's getting further away. Okay, but once you have finished up with your ground, then you can go ahead and work on the details of your ground. So I'm going to get a smaller brush again this time. And I'm going to get some green, and I'm going to paint in these details that I have here for my coral reefs. I'm going to get some green. And again, you want to use less water if you want to make it dark, more water if you want to make it light. But water is what activates these watercolors. So you at least want to get a little bit of water on your brush. And then corals are usually seen in many different colors, even in real life, but also in the book that we're inspired by. So you can use any colors that you want. I think I'm going to go with an orange, an even darker orange. There we go. You're just going to paint in those details. Now these smaller details, like the pebbles in our ground, if you would like to paint the bigger ones that you have in, you can definitely do that. But if you have some really, really small ones, then you can just color that in using your color pencils. All right, so now for the actual background, I'm going to teach you guys a technique for watercolors, and that technique is called wet into wet. So if you've used watercolors before, you may already know our wet into wet technique, but if you haven't used watercolors before, then you can go ahead and learn it now. All right, so what we do wet into wet is we just take a large brush and we start right away just with pure water. So I'm going to take some water and I'm going to add it to just one section at a time, especially if you have a big area. If you just try and add water to your whole background, that water is going to dry by the time you end up wanting to paint it. So you're just going to add it in one small area, and then you can use just one color, or you can use multiple colors, but you want to take your color, wet it up nicely, and you're just going to basically add it and blot it to your area of water that you just painted in. And then if you don't want just one color, you want multiple colors and have it nice and fun, you can take a second color and you can go in and blot in your second color, and then those two colors will mix really nicely together, and they'll blend really beautifully and create this really cool pattern. As you can see, it's kind of like spreading out, creating this really fun texture. Okay, so I'm just going to continue doing that for the rest of my background, and you guys can go ahead and do that as well. So you start out with pure water, take the first color, and then your second color. Try not to go in what you've already painted, but it's okay if you do. It happens. Now, if you have a lot of these white spots as you're kind of just blotting your paper and they're not really spreading into those white spots, you can just get pure water only on your brush, and you can just go right along those white spots and just tap it very lightly, and then the surrounding paint will just kind of fall into place along all of those little white spots that you tap. That will help kind of get it to connect a little bit more, especially in little areas. So pure water. And then if you don't want to just stick to two colors, you can even work with 3 colors or 4 colors. You can do as many colors as you want, but I do recommend sticking to colors that are similar. So colors that are next to each other on the color wheel are called analogous colors, and that is the colors that we usually want to use when we are using this technique. So I'm actually going to be painting over this detail that I added in the top in my ocean with the fish, because I'm going to have them look like they're super far away, so I'm not going to really add any detail or much color into them. So they're going to kind of fade into the background with this ocean color here. So you should begin to notice that your water usually only spreads where you put the water. So if you try your best to avoid that dry paint and only place the water in the empty areas, then your water will only spread in those empty areas. And you might just need to go up to the edges a little bit. And if it gets into your animal at all, that's okay, because it's swimming in the ocean, it has water all around it, so it's going to look like it's submerged a little bit more into the water than normal, and that's fine. So now I'm going to take my smaller brush, and I'm going to take some purple, just a little bit, and I'm going to kind of paint in these little fish that I added, just to make them look a little bit darker. So that way they can kind of look like they're further away and kind of fading into that background area. Okay. Now, you should be done or finishing up with your background. If you still need a little bit more time with that, you can definitely pause this video. But now that we have finished up painting our project, now before you start your color pencils, you want to make sure that your picture is completely dry. The color pencils will not work if your project is not dry enough. So one thing that I want you guys to kind of practice in general, if you like watercolor and you want to continue using watercolors, if you have big water spots on your paper and you see big water puddles, like you might see, I have these shiny areas, and those are considered a lot of water, little puddle areas. So you can take a paper towel and just very lightly kind of blot where those areas are, and that would help you that will help your picture dry a lot faster, but that will also help for it to not ruin your paper if you're using maybe a little bit of some thinner paper, so it can help your picture look the best, okay? So if you need to blot your paper, go ahead and do that, but no matter what, it's going to take some time to dry, so just wait for your picture to dry, and then you can, as you're waiting, you can pause the video, and then when you're ready, just play it, and we'll be right where you need to be for those color pencil steps. Now, once your picture is dry, you are going to take your color pencil, so I'm going to move my watercolors out of the way, and I'm going to pull my color pencils closer. And now here, there's not a very specific way to go about it. You're just going to kind of do what you think would look best, do what you think your picture needs, and using the same colors that you use to paint in your creature or your Aquicorn. And so for mine, since I used a pink with a little bit of like a darker edge on the left, I'm going to find my, I think I'm going to go with like an orange, pull in a similar but kind of different color, and I'm just going to add a little bit of shading along the snout here. I'm going to make it darker along the edge and then start to fade out a little bit as I go a little bit more up. Again, you don't have to do this. You're just going to do what you think would look best for yours. And I'm going to continue that orange. I'm going to add in a little bit of some pink here to fade that out too. And if you'd like, you can just add light layers of every color into every section just to kind of pull it all together and add in a little bit of a darker shade. I'm adding um, a lighter layer of pink all around the head. You probably can't even see it, but that's basically the goal, is to not really be able to see it, but just to kind of blend some areas in a little bit more than they were able to blend in with the watercolors. Okay, so once I have that, I'm going to continue on with this orange here, and I'm going to add just a little bit of some like shading along the top edge. And again, you don't have to do what I'm doing. You can basically do whatever feels right for you and your creature. Even if you are doing the Aquicorn like me, you can use any other colors that are different than me. You can do it in different ways. It's totally up to you. All right, now along the darker edge, I'm going to go in with some purple, and I'm going to kind of pull my darker area out a little bit more just by going in and making my darker area just a little bit darker. I'm just pressing lightly using the side of my pencil and using short strokes just to kind of pull that in together. You might be able to see a difference. You might not. It's just kind of a gradual change. So if you'd like it to be a very big change, then just keep adding more and more layers. You can blend the colors together a little bit more. You can do whatever you feel you need to do. Now I'm going to take my pink, and I'm just going to go in and add a couple of texture lines, kind of like little W's all along the body for some texture. Right here. So I'm just stopping and I keep looking at my Aquicorn's body just to see kind of what looks best. It's always nice and best if you guys take some time after adding a couple of steps, step back from your picture and see, do you like what you just did? Is there something different that you can do? What more can you add? Where else can you add it? So it's always nice just to kind of take a little break from what you're working on and figuring out what your next step and plan is. Alright, but once you go in and add just a little bit more detail, I think I'm going to go and make my darker color just a little bit darker. I'm going to actually add in a little bit of, I think I'm going to go in with some glue to make that purple just a little bit darker. I'm just going to use the side of my pencil, press lightly, and just add a slight layer all across all of those dark areas. So you probably can't really see much of a difference or a change, but I did add it, and you can do whatever you think looks best for you and your picture. Now, if some areas kind of don't really stand out that you wanted to stand out originally, like my horn and my ears kind of look a little flat, I'm going to add in some more color over there because the horn especially is kind of what I find that to be the best part of these Aquicorns. So that's what I kind of want to bring out a little bit more. So I'm going to take some orange, kind of pull that in. Then I'm going to take a little bit of pink and pull that in. Okay, so that stands out a little bit more. I think I'm going to do a little bit of a darker area. Actually, I did not do that with my purple, so I'm going to add in a little bit of purple into my darker area. Add this little detail along the ear. I'm going to add a second layer all along my head just to make that stand out a little bit more. And then once you have added all of the extra detail that you'd like to add to your Aquicorn, then you can start adding it into your background, wherever you would like to place that extra detail. Okay. So now I'm going to go in and start adding some extra detail into my ground here. So I'm going to go along my reefs and just add a couple of detail lines inside. You may not be able to see it because my reefs are so small. But just add whatever detail that you'd like to add. I'm just adding little curved lines inside each using the same color that I used to paint with. You can also go in with a darker shade, like for orange you may use red, for pink you may use red, for green you might want to use blue, just to make them stand out a little bit more. If you got a little bit of your ocean color into that, then you can also color them back in with your color pencil, and that might help bring that color back. Okay, then you can use whatever colors you want to color in some of the detail at the bottom, like the stones that you have. You might want to outline them if you'd like and not color them in, or you can color them in. It's really up to you. Whatever you'd like to do. If you'd like to add some more with just color pencil and just kind of lightly add that in, you can do that as well. All right, and then once you've added in whatever detail you want to add to the bottom, you can also go in and maybe add a shadow underneath your aquicorn on your ground. So whatever color you use for your ground, I'm going to take this yellow orange, and I'm going to just lightly kind of blend, add some color here, and blend it out for some shadow underneath the aquicorn. That's kind of floating above. So I'm going to add just a little bit of shadow underneath the tail, and then maybe continue it on into the rest of the ground. Then you can lightly fade it out. And so once you've added whatever you'd like, you can go into your ocean, and if there's anything that you'd like to add there, you can go ahead and add it. So I'm going to add just a little bit more blue into my little creatures over here, make them just a little bit darker. And then if you'd like to add maybe little water bubbles in the ocean around your other creatures, or even your creature that you created, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to take a lighter blue, and I'm just going to add a little bit of circles for some bubbles. You can add them in different sizes. Once you've finished up everything that you'd like to add, then that is it for our picture. So go ahead and finish up what you'd like to add with your color pencils. But once you are done, you are done. So great job, everyone. Thank you for all of your hard work, and I really hope you enjoyed your picture. I almost forgot, if there's any areas that you'd like to fill in for like the eye or the nostril, or any areas that are open and you'd like to fill in, then you can do that as well. But once you are done, again, great job, and now we're going to just finish up some review for our picture and our story here. And all right, so I'm going to pull back in my little handy dandy story structure chart here. I'm going to move my sample away so it's not distracting. So we went over all the left side of our story, but now let's go over our climax, solution, moral, and application. We just finished our project, so we'll just finish up talking about our book, and then we're going to be fully done with this class. Okay, so we left off at our climax. We talked about Lana finding the Aquicorn, rescuing it, and um, learning about the traditions um, that have not been followed by the villagers and the underwater world that is being destroyed by the overfishing that the villagers are doing. So, for our climax of this book, we find out that another storm is coming. So Lana needs to start working quickly to create a balance between her world and the underwater world and have them work together so that way underwater world can be saved, the land that the villagers live in can be saved, so that way the storm doesn't do more damage. So she finds that it is up to her, and again, she can't really rely on the adults that she once looked up to, so she needs to rely on herself. But for our solution here, she ends up working with the underwater creatures, and she is able to save her world and their world from harm. So, we have this wonderful story that not only has this beautiful story arc of the character Lana, who grows. She starts off, remembering her mom and everything that happened at the village. She is a little bit sad. Then she finds the Aquicorn, and then she learns this devastating news that the coral reefs are in harm due to the villagers and the overfishing. And so she takes it upon herself and she's determined to find the balance between her world and the underwater world once again. So, for the moral of our story, we have a couple of themes. One of the main themes that can be found in this book is an environmentalism theme. At the end of the book, if you have a physical copy or an ebook, you may have seen that our artist Katie O'Neill actually gives a lot of information about the real coral reefs here on Earth, and how they can be damaged as well, and they can be impacted by actions that human beings take here in our world. It also ties into, a, bigger than the ocean, and apart from the ocean, there's many things that can impact the ecosystems and the world, animals that live in the world, their habitats. And so this really touches on the idea that um, we have to focus on things that we can control and what our actions do and how it impacts our world. And then what are ways that we can communicate that once we learn ourselves? How can we communicate that to others around us to help our world and animals and species and life on our world that could potentially be harmed by actions that people are taking? So this is a really good thing to think about, environmentalism, because we love the animals that we see around us. We love the world that we live in. We love going to the beach, going to the ocean. We love seeing the beautiful animals in the forests and the rainforests and the jungles, and all of these places in our world have some form of um, have something that can be harmed by the actions of humans. And so, if we learn and take the time to educate ourselves on how to help these species, plant life, animals, or places in our world, if we find out how to help them, then we can teach others as well. So that's a big major theme and moral to our story here. So um, another thing that we can think about is how to make changes now for a better future. So that's another way that environmentalism kind of ties in, is with our actions and the way that we help change our world and our actions, then we can hope and we can change for a better future. Okay, so with that said, all everything that I just talked about for our moral. For the application, I want you guys to think about how you think you can save things on our planet. How you think you can save things on our planet that are in danger. So if you don't know of anything yet, you can ask your parents, and you guys can do a little bit of research. But there are many different places around Earth, many different species around Earth that are in harm of either going extinct, which means that they will no longer exist, or that they are endangered, which means that they are close to becoming extinct. So you want to think about these things and how your actions can possibly save our world. Okay, and so again, you can talk to your parents about it, you can do your own research, and then talk to your friends and your family about it and see how you can help this change. Alrighty, so I really hope you guys enjoyed this project, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this book. It was really fun for me to talk about and to learn with you guys, so thank you again. So I had a lot of fun with you guys today, and I hope you did as well. And if you haven't read this book, I really hope that this project and all that we talked about excites you to read and learn more. And so thank you all again for joining. I hope to see you again for our next class. Great job, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.